The following interview was conducted with Gebisa Ejeta, the Distinguished Professor of Agronomy for the Purdue University Oral History Program. It took place on Friday, January 29, 2010 in Stewart Center. The interviewer is Catherine Marquis, the Oral History Librarian. Welcome and good afternoon to you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Tell me where and when you were born and your parents and early years.
Yes, I was born in on Ethiopian calendar. It's a different calendar, but on June 1st, 1950, in a small village in Ethiopia called Wolankomi. It's in the Oromia region, west central Ethiopia. My parents were Motu Ayano, my mother, and my father, Ejeta.
Okay, and did they do, was it farming? Is that agriculture there?
Yes, they were. We were all in a very small farming community. Everybody that lived there had farming to engage in.
And now talk us a little about when you went to grade school and then high school. Go ahead.
Yes.
That's interesting.
Yes, there wasn't any formal school when I was a small child, but there was a church school, and every kid that has parental encouragement attended the church school, and my mother sent me there, and we were all doing well. And then when other communities had opportunity to attend formal education, we called it English school, and we didn't have any opportunity until one year I was about 10 years old. Someone who had kids our age had the means and started to start their own school for their children, and so people who knew them could go to them. And
was it in the village where you were living?
It was in the same village, but those of us from humble backgrounds were not included in that. So we couldn't attend. Later on, there was community pressure, and people approached this family and whether or not they would expand the school instead of holding it on their compound, build up or rent a small unit in a village or put it together. And there was already a house that was there, and so they agreed to have a school where everybody could attend.
That's right. What after grade school, then you went to high school, what we call high school, but was not in your village, though.
Actually, before that, this school that I described was only there for a year.
Okay.
And then in 1 year, we went through grades 1 to 3. And so at the end of the year, we were told we completed.
I think I should have signed up for that school.
Right.
It made it a lot easier on my parents.
And so they wanted to have room for other kids to come to do that, and so they said, "You're done." And that's when.
That's acceleration.
Yeah, that's right. That's when we looked for other opportunity, and my mother found an arrangement and made an arrangement for me to attend a school about 20 kilometers away from there. And but that meant that we had to walk, and we couldn't do it every day, and so we boarded a place in a small town where the school was. And so we would walk up the 20 kilometers on a Sunday, and then come back late Friday, walk down the 20 kilometers, and the whole school, the whole week would stay there. And so we did that from grade 4 to grade 8.
Okay. Was the school very large, though? Were there a lot of children there?
Yes.
Children from your village also went there, too?
No, I was the only one from my village that year. And then the next few years, others came too as well. Yeah.
Well, that's very nice.
And so it was a big school. I don't recall how many hundred kids were there, but I would suspect maybe close to 1,000 or 800 kids.
Was the language of it in English?
Yes, beginning in grade 4. Beginning in 4th grade, every subject we took was in English, except there was a language for the local official Ethiopian language, and we did that as a language class. And so we and then there was this acceleration that started in the village where I come from, and so kids that did well would get double promotion. And the first semester I did well. I stood first in my class, so I pushed to 5th grade, which meant that we went through it fairly fast. And then at the end of that, it was a huge challenge.
Would that have been 8th grade?
8th grade, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and then after that, you take a national exam at the end of 8th grade. And then depending on the score, you may choose what school to go to, and if you did well, you get your choice. I was fortunate enough to have done well, and then what I chose was an agricultural high school. It was a boarding school. The reason why I chose it was not because I was interested in agriculture, but because it was a boarding school. And the school that I attended was put up by Oklahoma State University.
I was going to ask you, how did that come about with some of the AID funding? Is that how?
That's right.
Okay.
In those days, is a continuation of the European Marshall Plan,
okay,
where the U.S. government was helping poor developing countries establish their institutions of learning and research and services. And so what they would do would be they would identify a U.S. university that is interested in international development work, and they would give them a contract to start a school or help strengthen an existing school. And so Oklahoma State University got the nod for working with Ethiopia, and they went there to establish a college and parked themselves in the beginning in a place where there was some facility to start the college until the new college they were building was completed. And so when they left to the compound where the college was going to be, instead of abandoning this place that they left behind, they converted it into an agricultural high school and made a connection between the agricultural high school and the college, where some of the better students that did well in the high school could go on to the college, and those others that didn't would then join the government and work in the agricultural extension service to help rural community development activities.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
And in high school, I know you went some basketball and volleyball?
I did. Yes. I did. I was a very, very small kid when I went in, and all of a sudden I grew tall. And because it's a boarding school, there's a lot of peer encouragement or peer pressure, however you look at it, and we encouraged each other. We participated in all kinds of activities. And then naturally I drifted to the sports where my height was an advantage, and I picked both volleyball and basketball.
Big help.
Yes, and so before long I was on the varsity team, both in men's volleyball and basketball.
In high school, was it just for boys only? Or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it was only boys.
And then you lived right there.
We lived on campus, and that's. If you can imagine a lot of these kids coming from rural communities, particularly very poor upbringing, and so all of a sudden you put them in a boarding school that's fairly similar to schools in the United States, and so there is a huge cultural shock in a positive sense later on.
Sure.
But you come from rural villages where you didn't have enough to eat, and no clothing to speak of, and so on, and all of a sudden
completely different,
very different. And so we were provided for by the college, by the high school. We get a clothing a couple of times a year. We get hot meals 3 times a day, and cakes.
The regular
and
boarding school that you
that's
attended.
Right.
Where were the teachers? Did Oklahoma State also man as far as the instruction was concerned?
All of our teachers were from Oklahoma.
Oh, okay.
Even in the high school, and then when we went to college, and they were from there as well. So we got, in my view, we got an excellent education.
Sure.
And so it was, these were very impressionable years for typical young kids, and so coming from communities where you have your own culture but not exposed to the international community, there is so much education that would go on, and so I credit my high school education as giving me a great foundation for both professional growth and own just personal growth as well.
Right. Mm-hmm. Were the classes very large?
No, the whole school were 200 kids.
Wow.
Yeah,
so you really got a lot of individual.
A lot of individual
to me, that would be a big help for the ones who really are coming from a different, primary level school.
They did, but remember that you got that opportunity on the basis of your score, and a lot of these kids, even though they came from poor backgrounds and poor school systems and so on, these are bright kids.
Right.
And so we were 50 being admitted in any one year, and we have two sections, section A and B, so 9A, 9B, 10A, 10B, and all the way 12A, 12B.
Sure.
And so we had one dormitory for the 25 kids in one section. And so it's the personal growth I'm talking about is you are put in a dormitory with 24 other kids, and you stay with them all 4 years. And so you've got 24 different personalities to deal with. And so, but we were a community, very community growth, and it teaches you how to work and live with people, and also you develop brotherhood, with just like kids in fraternities here, and so
Sure.
it's been a great experience.
Right. Is this high school still going?
No. In fact, after we graduated, I was in the last class of the high school, and at the end of that, it was converted into a junior college, and now it's a university college.
Oh,
yeah.
That's
in fact, I just visited it after the World Food Prize, and it's a College of Agriculture of 2,000 students now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yes.
And then from there you went to now the college is called Harrimer.
Yeah, at that
and
time.
that was close in, right near the school?
No. In fact, it was, I went from the village where I grew up in. I went west 300 kilometers. And the college I went to was on the eastern part of the country, about 500 kilometers. So it's in the opposite ends of the country. That was where it was, the college was located, and we went there.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about campus life, and did your parents, were they able to, did they come and visit you while you were there?
No. The culture of parents visiting kids in college and so on doesn't exist there.
Okay.
Mostly,
you go home.
Yeah, you go home.
Okay.
You do the long travel, and so parents don't really engage in. They have a lot more other problems to worry about.
They got enough to take care of at home. They know you're being taken care of.
That's right. That's right. That's true.
Well, and were there any? Did you play in athletics?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
And just to give you a background now, I went to a high school that was run by Oklahoma State University, and with 200 students, and the college was run by the same Oklahoma State University, and now we're about 400 kids, and so double the population. But again, on the bigger scale, a very small community, very tight-knit community, and more mentoring again by faculty, both Ethiopians and Americans. And the one thing that I can say about both the high school and the college is not only you get good education, but also there is this knowledge base that is inundated and inculcated in you about serving the country. And it's part of what in this country is called the land-grant university model. You get education, and with that education you go back and serve the community through agricultural education, agricultural research, and technology generation, and so on. So that was the kind of knowledge that this linkage with Oklahoma State University provided to us.
Very good foundation. Good
wonderful
base.
Foundation.
And worked out nicely for what your career path took.
I give credit to that upbringing, to that foundation.
Right. And then, let's see, then afterwards, then you were, before you came to Purdue, you were a research assistant. Is that before you came to Purdue, after you graduated, then what came next?
Right. I had finished college, and if I may say this, the college I went to in my time, instead of a 4-year program, was a 5-year program. The reason why it's a 5-year program is they put in a service year where you would leave the campus and sent out in different directions in various areas, whether it's in education, in research, or in technology transfer, help in the agricultural development of the country. The service is important to who you're providing the service to, but the growth for us was wonderful as well. You've had 3 years of college education, and now you're sent out at the end of the 3rd year to go out and serve. And during the year of somewhere in the country, and during that service year, you get the realities, an understanding of the realities in rural communities in your country. And we come back really fully strengthened by the need to serve, and then you come back, you finish your final year in college and graduate. At the end of the 5th year, when we graduated, the university inherently will choose a certain number of kids in the group that from the graduating class, and identify those that have potential to be on the faculty. And so you would serve there for about a year or 2, and then they will send you overseas to get your graduate education. So I was one of those lucky ones to be retained by the university there to be potential faculty member. And then I worked there for about 15 months, and there was an opportunity to go to Canada on a scholarship. And I didn't want to go to Canada. It's too cold. And then finally I was fortunate enough to find an opportunity to come to Purdue.
Yeah. Tell us how that came about.
It was a very chance happening.
A lot of those things occur that way.
That's right. A chance happening that a professor from Purdue University made a major discovery in his sorghum research. And to pursue further the research that he was doing, he chose Ethiopia to come and visit. And he'd never been outside the United States. And so
was this Professor X?
Professor John Axtell. And so John Axtell would seek some assistance from other people, and he would get to know the person who was my mentor when I was a college student, and then when I was serving there, he was my boss. And so he wrote to Dr. Burhane and saying that he wants to come to Ethiopia and would like to travel, looking at some sorghum varieties there and collect them. And so he said, sure, and there would be a young man by the name Gebisa who would be accompanying us on this travel. And so at the end of the week of working with him, he said he's impressed by this young man. What is the possibility of having him come and study at Purdue? He said, in fact, it would work very well because he just decided not to go to Canada, and he may consider Purdue, and so I jumped at that, and that's how it happened.
That's that is very nice.
Yes,
that worked out well. It was, and then after you stayed here and got your PhD.
Yes, I stayed.
Take it from there.
Okay. That's right. I stayed here, did both my master's and PhD under John Axtell. And
did you do your research in Ethiopia? Did you go back and forth? Oh,
no,
okay.
No, both my master's and PhD research were conducted here at Purdue. And Purdue was a center of excellence in global sorghum research even then. And Professor Axtell and his colleagues were recognized for the area of research, particularly nutritional quality area. And so there was a federal grant from the U.S. government that was coming to Purdue and to allow that. And so I worked both for my master's and PhD in the sorghum nutritional quality area, and that's what I worked on. And at the end of that, when it was time for me to return to Ethiopia, the situation changed back home. Ethiopia, the emperor was overthrown by a communist group, and the country had identified itself with the USSR, and relations with the US had soured, and conditions for a lot of people in the country were not very good, and there was civil war between factions over there, and I was encouraged not to return. But I was very eager to go back and serve in Africa, and fortunately I found an opportunity.
Yeah, that's where where you did the Sudan.
That's right. And so I joined an international crop research center that was funded by the United Nations Development Program. They were good enough to hire me, and I was fortunate enough to get the job. And so I was assigned in the Sudan, worked there for 5 years, and it's one of the most satisfying parts of my career, where I was able to develop the first drought-tolerant sorghum hybrid and promoted that commercially in the country, and that was really very successful. And so it happened. Now I went there in 1979, and the hybrid was released at the end of 1983.
Yeah. Was that pretty well funded, though, for your research over there when you were doing?
Yes, okay. The research at the time was funded by the United Nations Development Program, very well funded, very well supported, and so it was a two-man program. There was an Indian fellow who were working on millets, and I was working on sorghum, and we were well funded by our center, very well supported, and the national program that we worked with accepted us very well. And so it just, again, I guess there's no other way of saying it, very, very satisfying. Yeah, very satisfying.
And then I guess the next stage is Purdue, right?
That's right. At the end of 5 years, when...
Did you keep in touch with Purdue during the time you were in the Sudan?
Yes. In fact, the organization that hired me, at that time, part of the fringe benefits was you would get an air ticket to go back to your home country. And so when I joined, I knew I wasn't going to be able to go to Ethiopia. So I asked if I could designate West Lafayette, Indiana as my home base. And so we used to come here for vacation every year. And we lived there for 5 years.
Were you married? Were you married at that time?
That's right.
Okay.
And Sudan is next door to Ethiopia. And so we never could travel, unfortunately, to Ethiopia all 5 years. But we were able to come back here for every year. And so that contact has been very useful, because I was able to remain in touch with people here. And when there was opportunity here on the faculty, people said, oh, how about asking Gebisa if you would apply? And so they encouraged me to apply. And it was a godsend, because by then, our daughter, who was born here in West Lafayette, was getting to be a school age, and there wasn't a school for her. And so we decided maybe it's best to come back here, and where I could have a professional activity to work on, and my family would have a home base here. Right. And that's how we ended up here.
Let me ask you about your family. Where did you meet your wife?
My wife and I met in college. And
so she's from Ethiopia?
She's from Ethiopia. She was a freshman the year that I was working on campus, and we got to meet there. And so I came alone here anyway, because we were not married.
When you came for your graduate?
When I came to graduate school. And so between my master's and PhD, my major professor, John Axtell, was invited to give a talk in another African country. Unfortunately, he couldn't accept the invitation, because he had another commitment to go to Austria about the same time. But he was kind enough, he asked the USAID if he would send me instead. He told them he had a good African student working with him, he would do well representing the program. Would you mind if I sent him? And they said, well, if you have the money and you have confidence on the young man, you could send him. So I wrote my girlfriend that I left behind, and I may be coming that way, and I did, and took a 3-week or 4-week vacation, and in that time we got married, and I was able, again, fortunate enough to get her out of the country at that time,
sure.
even though conditions were not good, and so that's how we came back, and so 2 years after I've already been in the United States, she came with me.
That's very good.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the new research. You're on the Purdue faculty. I know you shared some of these others, but for the interview, go ahead.
Yes.
Did you continue your association with Dr. Axtell while you were here?
Right. You know, he also worked on sorghum, and that's how I studied under him. And remember, I mentioned earlier that the sorghum program at Purdue was very well recognized under his leadership. But a lot of all that we did before that was in the nutritional quality area, to making the crop more nutritious for people who live on it or animals that are being fed on it. And so people in animal science, in biochemistry, in agronomy worked on that. And so the premise upon which I was hired is Purdue is getting to be a center of excellence, and we need to grow beyond nutritional quality. And so we need to do other research areas on sorghum and the areas of drought tolerance and disease resistance and so on. They wanted to hire somebody to do that. And so I came back, even though we all worked on sorghum, the division of labor is I was working on drought tolerance and parasitic weed resistance. And those were the two areas that I chose, and other disease resistance as well. And so John and I divided the program that way, but I still enjoyed the mentorship from him in the early days. And and so today we've become a much more comprehensive program in our research area, and so it's among the very well known programs in the world.
And you did very well here, right? It was, and a lot of the things that you did, but it takes sometimes people say it takes a while. You have to keep working on it all the time, right?
That's correct. That's correct. And we did. And part of the reason why it takes time is, one, research is like a building block. You discover something, you add on top of that, and gradually, keeping in mind all the way through that this cumulative knowledge would lead to solving a real life problem in a community and so on. And so that's one. And the other reason why it takes time is it's not only the science and the breakthroughs in science that helps communities or people. It is the institutional building process that needs to be there. And so you need to work with people in developing countries to build their communities, build their institutions. For example, one of the things that I was credited in was this value chain approach to making a technology work in a community. And so we had developed drought-tolerant, parasitic weed-resistant sorghums, but it wasn't being taken up. And so I thought of a way to get that catalyzed. And so we put together a technology package that included a water conservation measure, soil fertility, and so that not only are they able to produce more, but can they produce surplus enough so that they would market the surplus, and then being able to afford better the investment that are necessary for buying fertilizers, buying seeds, and so on. And then also, that doesn't just happen, so you have to help create the market opportunities. For
the chain.
That's right. The value chain approach is, the farm practices and the inputs that need to be there, and so the input market for seeds and fertilizers, and then the produce at the end, and to market the grain, and also, if possible, linking them with things that would add value to the raw material that is being produced. And in our situation, we talk to bakeries to accept sorghum instead of wheat, or to make a composite flour. We worked with cookie factory or breweries, and so those kinds of extracurricular activities need to take place in a culture where the public-private partnership is very well developed, as we have in the United States. It's not an issue. But in developing countries, a lot of that will have to be developed.
Right. And continual work, and a lot hadn't been done before in that area.
That's right.
So that works
right.
now.
That's right.
The World Food Prize.
Yes.
How did you? I read that you got a phone call.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I share a similar thing. Dr. Geddes was quoted with a similar thing. He got a phone call, and he wasn't sure, and so he transferred it over to somebody else when they called him about the medal. He had told me that. So I think I get the same reaction if somebody be another survey. I'd hang up.
Right. I received a phone call from the World Food Prize Foundation, and I had just gone to Washington.
Was that you done that the testimony?
I gave a testimony to the U.S. Senate Foreign Relations Committee.
Was it good? I downloaded that. It was very good.
Oh, thank you.
Excellent. Well done.
Thank you. And so the president of the World Food Prize Foundation started with giving me a compliment about the testimony, and following that, and then he started talking about the World Food Prize week that was coming up in October. That immediately I just made the connection and said, "Oh, he's calling me to ask me to speak at the ceremony."
We're getting the program together.
That's right. So he said, the program is really developing. It's looking good, and I think it's going to be a good week. And he said, "Are you coming?" And I said, "I have not planned." So I said, "Well, we really would like for you to come." When I didn't say anything, and then he says, "We really would like for you to come because you are the 2009 World Food Prize winner." So I had not expected it, so I was stunned.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Do you have any idea? Do you think that you've been nominated? Do you have any? Sometimes people say that I've talked to people where they sort of there have been, but they didn't get it. Depending on the prize or something, or some special award.
Yeah, that was exactly what happened with me. I think I was nominated 2004, and
do you happen to find that out by serendipity, or
no? When they do something, then they have to have information. A lot of the information I know, and they don't.
Right.
And so somehow, finally,
they need to touch base.
They needed to touch base.
Right.
And, but then the nomination is good only for 3 years.
Okay.
And so when 2007 was over, I said it was over, and by then I had already gone on a sabbatical leave and worked in Africa, and came back. I thought it was over, and not only that, but meanwhile there was a Purdue person that won in 2007, and I said there's just no way they would give it to another Purdue person.
You never know.
You never know.
Might be a Kennedy $50. Who knows, right?
Right. And so that was why I wasn't even suspecting that he may be calling me about that.
And that was a very nice thing. And you had a special ceremonies, and people came from your. Was your mother able to come?
No.
Oh,
no,
but you have seen her. You've been back.
Yes,
right?
The World Food Prize Foundation sent me back with a photographer and to get some footage for the program they put together.
Oh, before you got the award.
That's right.
Oh, I see.
They sent me there, and so I went to my village, the high school that I went to, the college I went to, and so that we had testimonials from people, side pictures, and so on. And
what did you say? Did your mother say? What?
She couldn't understand it. She couldn't understand, and so she's generally.
Is your father still alive, or
no? My father is gone.
Okay.
So my mother understood that something good have happened, but she has no.
But she knew you were coming.
Yes,
yeah.
yes. She still recognizes me.
And that picture is nice of her with the two of you sort of in the background. I think it's a great shot. Yeah. And of course, then afterwards you have the media, and then you had the day here at Purdue, which was nice.
Yes. Someone said, your life is never the same after that, and I think to a great extent that is true. There is so much demand on your time. A lot of good things have happened in terms of people congratulating me and so on. I've received over maybe 2,500 emails from around the world, notes from people that I never knew that were touched by the work. We're all human beings.
What it meant to the people.
That's right.
That's really key, and they realize that.
They realize that, and I got that. But then on the other hand, the great thing, as far as I'm concerned, that this did is not only the personal recognition, but the platform that it has been and it's going to be in terms of the credibility, speaking on behalf of the poor, on behalf of the cause of the science.
The international.
Yes.
Right.
And so that has been very, very significant. I've had a lot of demand on that to go around the world and speak until now. And from here to next September, for example, I have 28 invitations to go around.
One of the things I read, with the prize that you got, you're going to set up a foundation for educational, which is very nice.
Well, that's what we're working on.
Right.
But
it's a good thought, and it really it'll mean things go on.
Yeah.
Long after you're gone.
My family and I have decided that we have enough, and fortunately for us, our children have attended college, and
did some of them come to Purdue?
Yes.
Okay.
A couple of them attended Purdue, and others went somewhere else, and so today we're okay, and so my children appreciate the fact that they've been given great opportunity because of the opportunities that I had in the early days, and so they realize there are many more that don't have the opportunity that I had, and they would like to help. And my children have good jobs, and they have good network and linkages, and they said if we have a foundation, there would be many that they are around that would contribute to the foundation. And so initially we're thinking of creating the same kind of boarding school that I attended that gave me that opportunity.
Very nice. It's needed.
Yes, badly needed. And so we will see how it would go.
It's a good thought, and it's a good plan.
Yeah.
The other nice thing is that you got the Nelson Innovation Prize that the governor set up, and you got it this year. This is wonderful. Ironic,
yeah, it's ironic because of the fact that
did he make any comment to you? Because he has kind of a sense of humor, from what I understand. He said, "Well, I named it, and I'm giving it to another Purdue person as well."
He didn't say, and I was surprised myself that he would do that. I think the award was originally established to encourage younger people from the state of Indiana, and I think
it's a nice award.
It's a nice award. I hope he would do that in the future. But it was nice.
I want to talk a little about some of the mentoring. You talked about Dr. Axtell, and Larry Butler was another one. And I remember Dr. Butler because I did some literature searches, and I knew Professor Axtell because years ago we got some things from the USDA, and there was money for literature searches, and so I did some for him, and we kind of got to know each other, and occasionally I'd run into him at Smitty's, and he always spoke, and so I sort of knew him. But I thought, and you mentor students as well, and so it works both ways.
That's right. I have been very fortunate to have had some really great mentors. Certainly John Axtell, because he,
Right.
as I keep saying, he literally picked me from Africa and brought me here, and then he was a great mentor. He encouraged me, and he saw in me very early on some attributes that he thought had shown potential, and these were attributes that I didn't even know that I had, and so he nurtured that in me and encouraged me, and so I'm very grateful. There are several others.
One is your faculty member at college.
That's right. He was a guy who directed me to study plant sciences, plant genetics. He had just returned from university education at University of Minnesota, and had heard about the Nobel Prize that Norm Borlaug had won. And so he said, you can do a lot with a degree in genetics, and ironically, it's kind of happened the way he projected. And so I give him a lot of credit, and I think more than the fact that I won the World Food Prize, the fact that the education that you can do, you can serve humanity through the opportunities that you have through plant genetics was very important. And then when I finished college, the graduate school, the person who was my supervisor was was a Purdue graduate, a fellow by the name Lee House, and he was a great mentor.
That's don't lose the forest for the trees?
That's right. He was the one that he said, someone else who hired him and told him that, don't lose the forest for the trees.
I didn't realize he was a Purdue grad. That's interesting.
He was a Purdue graduate from here. Master's in biochemistry and a PhD in genetics. So I worked for him. And then a person who was very well known in the community here was the director of international programs, Woods Thomas.
Right.
Woods was a great mentor. And,
super guy.
Yes, and he was committed
a good contact because international.
He was committed to international development, and early on he engaged me, and he sought my inputs and encouraged me and got me involved, and I'm very grateful for him as well. So in return, but the only way I can pay back for these people is to try to reproduce or replicate their vision on encouraging younger people. And I've been very fortunate to have worked with a lot of young people over the years, and many of them now also are engaged in the kind of things that I do. And so it's
and
wonderful.
You teach that course in one of the graduate courses, which is nice.
That's right. I teach a graduate level course in principles and methods of plant breeding. And I've also taught seminar series in the past, and so this is in the area of research that I do, and so I can relate to it well enough, and I can impart that.
The good combination
passion,
of mentor and the teacher.
That's right.
Right, which is good.
The passion that I have for the research.
And then you got your associations. Do you still keep active in the crop science and your professional associations?
I am still a member. I'm not as active as I used to be.
And you're a fellow of the American Advanced.
That's right. I've been a fellow of.
What about that? The Science Council, the consultative group on international agriculture research. Are you still involved with that?
Yes, I'm still a member of the Science Council. This is an advisory body of about 7 people that provide advice to 15 international agriculture research centers on science quality, science relevance, and science impact. And so it's a body that you serve for about 3 years and renewable for another 3. And it's a wonderful opportunity because these 15 centers serve the entire globe in agricultural research, directed to particularly in developing countries, and to be able to.
It's a good contact. It's a good association for you.
To offer service through that has been very good.
One of the other things that I read, you want maybe a dialogue between your friend, the faculty member, who at your university, like a seminar series of some sort.
Right. When I went back a month after the World Food Prize. The government of Ethiopia invited me to come back.
And you got an award from them.
That's right. And the president of the country gave me the highest medal of honor that they would give to any of their citizens. Even though I'm no more a citizen there, they expressed
on behalf of.
Yes, and they expressed their pride by giving me that. And I was able to meet with the president and the prime minister. And then we held a dialogue on agriculture development in Ethiopia, in Africa. And hundreds of people gathered for that. I was a keynote speaker there. Other people spoke, including my old mentor from college. And so we want to be holding that annual dialogue, and I have suggested that be named after my mentor from college.
Very nice. That's very nice.
Yeah.
And a self-perpetuating kind of thing, which is good.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
I'm going to leave it and let you make some closing comments or something that I didn't ask that you would like to add, or topic that I may have missed on.
No, I think we've covered a lot of ground with this.
And you're looking ahead.
Yeah, and just in a passing for the younger generation in particular is what has been very important to me is to want to be as good as I could be in my career, in my profession, in the science that I do. That is very important, to be the best scientist that you could be in whatever field that you are. And as I tell my children, but also at the same time, it is good to sustain and maintain this element of service in your background. I think if we would think beyond our self-gratification to provide service and assistance to something bigger than ourselves. At the end of the day, when you have gone through your career and so on, invariably, I'm sure you would ask yourself, how have I made the world a better place, and what have I contributed? To be able to say that is just a wonderful,
it's a great thing.
Good thing.
Right, and it means so much, and it's very fulfilling, self-fulfilling, which is really nice.
And as John Axtell, my mentor, would say, it's all about people. And so if in the process you impart that passion to others, and you give them a hand and every step of the way, it's not only what you do, collectively what you would all do in serving humanity, serving society.
Right.
It's a wonderful
thing. It's also serving yourself at the same time by doing that. That's really key.
That's right.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
For having me.
My pleasure.
Yeah.